Aphrodite. We are back live. It is Tuesday, October 8th in Round Lake Heights, Illinois, and this is WLCB, Slade's Corner, Wisconsin, 101.5. My name is Bill Miksch. I'm president of WDMA Financial Group in Grays Lake, Illinois, and for the next hour, this is your Insurance Corner. And I'm proud to be here. This is the fourth year and going on 4.5 years that we've been doing this, looking to help people understand their insurances, whether it's health, life, long-term care, annuities, retirement, Social Security, estate planning, and a whole bunch of myriad things all around that, plus or minus. What we try to do is we help to, as I like to say, we want to entertain you, so that's my first job. I got to entertain you, otherwise you're going to find another station. Then if I can entertain you, I'm going to try to educate you to the extent I can over the hour that whatever we're covering. And then maybe I make you laugh once in a while, because this is a business where it can make your eyes water the moment you say the word insurance. I've said for a long time, you could have a PhD from Harvard and the word insurance hits your gray matter and it goes into nuclear meltdown. And speaking of nuclear meltdowns, the man, the legend, the way of life, coming to you from the bunkers somewhere hidden in the bowels of Dayton, Ohio, Sean Hauser.
Hey, well, welcome, William, I should say. Welcome from the bowels of Dayton, Ohio.
Yes. How are you, my friend?
Very good. Very good.
Well, that's awesome.
Looking forward to another informative show.
Yeah, this show tonight, Sean, was prompted by a listener that Mandy told me about, our social media director who tracks what goes on with our show. And this particular listener was wanting to get information about health insurance for college students. And that's a very finite spot. There's a lot of our listeners that are going to go, oh, my God, really? It's not that difficult. Not so fast, ladies and gentlemen. It's not as easy as it looks. There's a lot of people out there that don't have the luxury of having, a six-figure income household and corporate benefits and, kid can go wherever they want and, everything's hunky-dory. You've got a lot of different situations out there, and then there's no one policy, one rule in any of the colleges around the country. Some are going to offer you a Obamacare level plan. Some are going to offer you a limited version of what's called a compliant Obamacare plan. Some are going to offer you alternatives like a short-term medical plan. Others might offer you a accident and hospital indemnity plan, which are limited in scope for sure. Others might offer teledoc and maybe routine care and infirmary. Am I saying that word right? Infirmary level benefits for acute things like colds and flus and maybe a sense of anxiety because you've got a final coming up and you're not ready. Certainly there are a vast array of medical related coverages, for lack of a better word, or opportunities for women who might need help with their medical issues regarding their female needs. So there's a vast array of things, and then it's not for the faint of heart. If your brain goes into meltdown after looking at one or two of these things, you just throw your hands up in the air and you acquiesce to whatever the college is offering you. And then when you find something that might be better, you might not be able to get out because it's already baked into the tuition and you already paid the tuition. You can't go back to the school 2 months later and say, hey, I've got a job, my kid's on my plan, I don't need this anymore. And you may find out that that's just too bad for you. You should have thought about that when you signed up. So we're going to cover a variety of things that are related to college kids and health insurance related expenses. And then, by the way, There's also, what about the foreign student? What do they do? If somebody's coming from Germany or England or Australia or China, what do they get when they're here? Because while they may have quote-unquote national health care in their country, I don't know if that transitions or transcends across the pond over to here. So there are options, but then you have to be aware of what the rules are and the moving parts. So all of that being said, Sean, this has been a very tough week for the people south of us. North Carolina, I've got some friends and family members that are in North Carolina, extended family members, friends, including my eye doctor who just moved to Asheville. We have another hurricane coming through Florida. I definitely have family members in Tampa and clients in Orlando and more family on the East Coast in Melbourne. So lots of stuff going on with regard to the weather. And Milton, as of a few minutes ago, Sean, I don't know if you saw, but it's been upgraded back to a Category 5. So our prayers and our thoughts are going out to them with the devastation that Helene just did, where there is still mass amounts of garbage lining the streets in large portions of Tampa and St. Pete and surrounding vicinities. Those things may end up becoming bombs or missiles, given what's coming. So I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
No, I was just thinking about that today because we have a development center in Miami where I work, and a lot of those people in Miami are having relatives come from the west coast of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, one of my best friends lives in Melbourne, and I was worried that he was going to stay there because some of the city officials and the state officials are warning this is going to be pretty massive, and this is going to cut right through the middle of the state, through Orlando.
It absolutely
and
is.
I think they're shutting down the airport tomorrow in preparation for it.
Tampa shut down yesterday.
Yeah, maybe I'm a day behind, but yeah, that's Orlando shuts down. That's a big hub.
That's Tampa shut down a day early, and I think part of that is to clear the deck, get all the planes out to the extent they can. Mm-hmm. And, the people that had flights, it's just, Mother Nature has dictated what the rules are, and we have to be aware of our passenger safety at this point. And arguably you could have waited a little longer, but then at what point does the storm create problems to get out, and what about the planes coming in? And so you just have to make a decision and kind of draw the line in the sand.
Right.
And it's that nobody is doing this with a lot of glee and go, look at me, look what I'm doing. They're all just agonizing over all of this because they know people's lives are affected on every different front. And then Randy, my son who lives in Tampa, has intimated video shots of I-75 being a parking lot going north and south.
Wouldn't doubt it.
Yep.
Wouldn't doubt it, because every time those things, when you think about some of these trips that people take, there's a few major highways, and then a lot of this is 2-lane roads in a lot of places, and just can't handle the mass exodus of people moving north. So
I kind of said tongue-in-cheek, if I ever moved to Florida, I would probably want to do it in the form of a motorhome. That way I can pick up my house and get the heck out.
If I ever move to Florida, I'll be right outside Colorado Springs. I've lived in the Midwest my entire life. I've seen the destruction of tornadoes and something like a hurricane that is many, many tens of miles wide, scares the living daylights out.
Yeah, so, I have never seen a tornado up close and personal. We've been close enough to see the damage of what a tornado could do. My high school back in the day when I was, I think, a junior or sophomore, got hit, and the top of the roof of the field house got whacked, and you could see the field house from my house. That's how close we were. But you didn't see the tornado hit it. You just heard about the aftermath because at the time you weren't watching,
No.
And then where we lived, fast forward to, I don't remember what year it was, maybe 25 years ago, in Lindenhurst, there was a nursery that was at the corner of Sand Lake Road and 45 got hit, and that was literally across the street from our subdivision, but the subdivision we lived in didn't get touched. So I've not seen one. God knows I've seen enough on TV to see what they look like, and God knows the devastation that you see the aftermath. And it's one of the things I tried to intimate to my son, who at the moment is staying put. And there's some context here, so I'll give him his due. But I reminded him, I was like, it's not just a hurricane, bud. It's the tornadoes that can be spawned out of the hurricane. But his girlfriend is in the healthcare business, and so is his girlfriend's sister. And both of them had to work today, and the sister has to work tomorrow. So he's like, well, what do? I can't just pick up and leave by myself. They're going to be hung out to dry. What does that look like? So he's kind of stuck between a major league rock and a hard place. And then when I asked him what kind of supplies he got, he said, well, I bought a case of water. And I'm thinking, well, a case? How about like 10 cases? You may not have water for a week or two,
if you can find it now, it's, you look at those stores and, Walmart's empty, Costco's empty.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So anyway, we're going to talk about that. I've got a special message at the end, and this message is directed at the people in Carolinas and Florida and Georgia who are going through this mess right now. And then we're going to have a special series on annuities starting next week, Sean, and then shortly thereafter a whole series on estate planning. And it's going to get very involved, so stay tuned for all those. We'll give everybody a heads up when that's about to start. And with a little luck, I can get my estate planning attorney in here to help me grease the skids, if you will, so that I don't step on my foot. So anyway, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Your Insurance Corner. It is 6:15, I think, if I'm seeing that clock right, on the board at WLCB, Slade's Corner, Wisconsin. We're going to talk about college, your student or student-to-be in college, and health insurance. This was from a listener who was very interested in this particular topic. And, Sean, just so to give context to this, this is a person that has been communicating evidently on certain websites that we have, or Instagram or what have you, and this is not the first request on this subject matter from that person. So I'm like, okay, we'll take up the topic. So if you are a parent of a kid coming up to student, status, to college, this is for you to listen to. If your kid is already in school and you just acquiesced to the health insurance that was offered by the school, then these conversations are for you. If your kids like mine are already done, then it is what it is, but maybe you can take some solace in getting a better understanding of this, so that maybe a friend or a family member who's going to go through this says, hey, maybe you should look into the weeds a little bit, pay attention to the details, because it's not just the premium, it's what's underneath what's in the contract, as we like to say. So every school, Sean, every school in the country has a different offering of health insurance related coverage. There's not one unique level of coverage, or not one bucket that you can go and say, okay, everybody's got the same level of coverage. And why is that? Well, because the health insurance in general is a state-run environment. It's not a federally run environment. Colleges per se don't have to offer health insurance. They don't. because the student is not an employee of the school. They are a student. But they also understand that students will have healthcare needs, and there are situations that happen every day where a student may become sick or ill or have an accident, and they need immediate care, either through an emergency room, an urgent care, a teledoc. I know when I was in school, there was a guy named Leo who broke his ankle really bad ice skating, really bad. And I was there when it happened, and it was nasty. And back then, you're a student. You're not thinking about health insurance. You're just like, oh my God, that's terrible. Well, now fast forward to now. Now I'm thinking, what did Leo do? Did he have his parents' insurance? Did he have his own insurance? Did he have a combination of things? What did he do? And that was 30, 40 years ago, keep in mind. So, 30 years, 40 years? Well, I'm not going to date myself. It was 10 years ago.
Well, Bill, the same thing happened to a friend of mine. He had to go home to get it.
Yep.
I mean, they went to the emergency room and had to stabilize it, but to get the surgery and the pins and everything, he had to go home.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Every school has different offerings, and we're going to cover a variety of those things. There's different kinds of plans. Typically, the premiums are, they can range anywhere from maybe $50 to $100 to $300-400 a month, depending on the nature of the plan, or higher. There will be PPO plans. There will be HMO plans if they are more traditional kinds of coverage. But then you've also got Medicaid for the more indigent students. And for those students that don't qualify for Medicaid, but they might qualify for, and they don't want to spend the money for a more robust health care plan, and maybe they don't have access to health care through their parents, then they have things like short-term medical plans and accident reimbursement, or hospital indemnity or hospital reimbursement plans. And the premiums vary, the coverage varies, the deductible varies. The first thing people are going to look at, though, Sean, and I know you'll appreciate this, is what's the premium. And I understand that, because that's real money out the door. If it's baked into the tuition, it is what it is. And you just have to make a decision. Do I want to have my kid insured by that, or is there other options? So let's talk about the choices. The first one is obvious, the parents' plan. So if, Sean, I'm a parent, I know you're not, but let's assume you are, and you've got a kid that's going to go out of state, and you have a PPO plan. That should be okay in most circumstances, unless the PPO is a in-state only kind of a thing. I'm not going to get into the weeds, because that does exist. But if you have a PPO plan, that's probably the best of all worlds, because your son or daughter is going to be able to access care, presumably if they're in an area where there is coverage in that state for providers, at least at some level with the hospital. The student doesn't have to worry about it. The parent can waive the premiums. And let me be clear about something. The premiums are baked into the tuition. You as a parent have to make an action to tell the school, I don't want the coverage. They are going to assume you're going to take it unless you tell them otherwise. So you can't just acquiesce and say, well, I don't want that, do something verbally. You have to actively take a position, and in some cases tell them in writing, I don't want the coverage. And some of that is because of liability. The school does not want to be in a position where a parent, for whatever reason, said no to the health insurance coverage, and maybe it was just pure cost, and they said, I've got my own, or I've got something different, and the school says, okay, fine. And then something happens to the kid, and then the parents going, hey, what happened to my health insurance? I'm going to sue you now because you didn't offer us something. So that's why it's automatically baked into the tuition, and then the parent has to take an active action to say, no, I don't want the coverage. But going back to the parents' plan, if it's a PPO, that's probably the best of all worlds, because then more than likely, particularly if the student's going to a quasi-urban community, you're not going to have any or too many issues with access to health care. However, if you're in an HMO, to your point, Sean, about your friend, his parents' plan may have been an HMO, and that's a local network. Let's say Chicago, and your friend maybe went to school in Florida. Well, he's covered for emergencies, and typically life-threatening emergencies, as I like to say. But for any other kind of routine stuff, he's not covered. So if somebody gets hurt, they may take care of him, to get him stable. But to your point, he's got to come home if he wants to finish, being treated for what he or she is going through. So you have to be careful about what you have, and don't assume, well, it's not going to happen to me, because things happen. And I'm going to use this as an example. I literally just heard about this today, just before I left for the radio show. Client of mine, been a client of mine for a long, long time. And they have a younger 20-something male. I don't know if he's a welder or he's in a shop somewhere for sure. He chose not to take any of the insurances, Sean. No medical, dental, vision, no disability, no life insurance, nothing. And I learned today this person has stomach cancer. So to consider the idea that it's not going to happen to me begs the obvious. It doesn't happen to me until it does. And then you're looking around for help, and there isn't any because you made a decision not to do something. So bad things happen to good people all the time. To my client's credit, they're helping this kid by helping to pay for his rent and a few other things, but he's got no health coverage. I don't even know if he qualified for Medicaid under the circumstances. So don't assume it's not going to happen to my kid, because it can. If there is an HMO that is being offered by the school, that might not be a bad idea, because especially if you're way out of state or further than 100 miles from your home. Taking an HMO kind of a plan, if you don't have a PPO offering, an HMO plan may be a good deal, understanding that that HMO is for that region only. So, for example, if I go to school in the southwest part of Illinois, let's say Quincy, they have a few HMO plans available and a PPO or two. I might take the HMO plan because it's cheaper. I don't have a doctor relationship, so I'll just pick one, and then we'll go from there. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that your son or daughter does not know how the insurance works. So they think they just have the insurance. If you have an HMO, make sure they know to pick a primary care doctor, and that's their doctor to go to for everything. Make sure they understand that if they go to the emergency room and it's not an emergency, they're not covered. Make sure that if they understand how the plan works and they're not sure if they can go to the emergency room, that they must call the primary care doctor and advise him or her, hey, this is my problem, can I go to the ER or urgent care? So best to understand what it is you're buying. Don't just buy it because the premium was affordable. So parents' plans are the best choice, usually, unless it's an HMO. And then if the school is offering a relative PPO or an HMO kind of a plan in lieu of the parent, that may be a good choice. So a second choice is Obamacare. Now, I'm going to say this out loud, Sean. I am protesting calling this the Affordable Care Act going forward. And this is professionally speaking, I find the word the Affordable Care Act intellectually offensive when the networks are been smashed to heck and your out-of-pocket costs are $9,400 and going up. So we're going to call it what it is. It's Obamacare, and that's fine. It does work for a lot of people, and I don't begrudge them. I have a lot of clients on Obamacare. I just don't want to call it the Affordable Care Act anymore because it just makes it gets me angry. So,
well, I mean, I think that's easy to say, but the reason why it was called the Affordable Care Act is that one time it was, but then with all of the maneuvering, they ruined the original spirit of it. So calling it Obamacare could sound like you're saying it's Obama's fault, which really it isn't.
No, there are 20 congressmen who who are at fault for letting this go through. Listen, I've said this. I've been very consistent about this. My industry had a chance to fix this on their own, and they didn't. So they got it shoved down their throat like saying a bad word, and your mom is going to give you a bar of soap to keep your mouth clean.
Not a bad idea.
They earned this moniker of having this stuff shoved down their throat. But honestly, I don't see any of the health insurance companies complaining about their profit margins. They're just a pass-through. So if they're increasing premiums, what they're doing is they're taking a look at their claims, they're taking a look at their administration, the different rules that are available, adjusting their prices, and then saying, here, Sean, here's next year's plan, take it or leave it. Now, for people that are in lower income, that does help them from a premium standpoint, and in some cases, the plan design does, get affected also. But I want to make it clear that those subsidies that might be available to certain people are loans, they're not gifts. So if you report an income of $21,000 a year, you're going to get a very nice subsidy to help pay your premium. And your plan might actually change too. But if your income at the end of the year, you thought it was going to be $21,000, it ends up being $50,000, I can promise you a big chunk of that subsidy that was there to help you pay your premium is going to have to be paid back. So, but the Obamacare plans, Affordable Care Act plans, are available for people that are in college. Now, this gets a little tricky because it's based on household income and it's also based on the student's income. Well, if the student doesn't have any income, he or she is not going to qualify for a subsidized health plan, which means they have to pay retail price. So how does the retail price compare to what's being offered by the college? We can guarantee that the health plan that's being offered through the ACA is compliant, it's robust, in meaning that there's full coverage. The deductibles and out-of-pockets might be very high, but you do have full coverage, particularly for catastrophic, which honestly, for most of these kids, that's really what that's there for anyway. It's for the emergency, not for the colds and flus kind of thing. We're coming to the bottom of the hour, Sean. We're going to take a quick break here. We're going to continue this discussion on college and health insurance for students. My name is Bill Miksch. That's Sean Hauser. This is Your Insurance Corner, and we'll be right back after these short messages.